I'm back.
Where were you?
Where was I? Doing work. Actual work.
What is this to you?
What is this to me?
Is this not actual work?
This channel's a jerk. It's been a while since the last video on this channel. However, I am back and we're gonna be looking at some hopefully interesting stuff. This time around, I actually have no idea what I'm even going to be looking at because Tim is orchestrating this entire production with 2 cameras now.
How dare you point at me?
So Tim, what am I doing here?
Okay, you are rewatching a gameplay trailer.
A gameplay trailer.
Ish, yes.
Okay,
Are you ready for it?
I'm ready. What if I've seen this before?
I hope you haven't.
Trek to Yomi.
Yes.
Okay, I've never heard
It's
of this.
a gameplay. It's a game that's supposed to be released this year.
Okay, coming this year. Alright, that looks tame so far. Japanese setting reminds me of Ghost of Tsushima. Oof, flickering shadows. Whoa. So it's black and white. Damn. Wow, I really like this. Oh, that Japanese, like, wall thing. Alright, so I've got a keyboard here, which I'm going to use to go back a little bit, because I'm seeing some stuff. This is really interesting. The fact that it's black and white is, this is going to sound bad. It's almost like a way to mask the bad graphics. Like, I'm not saying that this game has bad graphics and that the art is bad, right? Yeah. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying, like, if you objective, like, because I've never really looked at a full-on 3D game like this that's just, like, black and white.
I don't know that one has been made before.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if something like this exists. I mean, to be honest, like, it's reminding me of Limbo.
Yeah. Okay,
that kind of game.
Well,
that is 2D, yeah.
It dynamically switches from...
Dynamically switches from 2D to 3D. Yeah, so like Limbo, I mean, it also had that kind of atmosphere, right? Which I feel like this game has, because you can tell that they've deliberately put in foreground elements like this that are out of focus, just for the sake of having some like parallaxing and out of focus elements close to the camera to make it more cinematic, like, you know, on purpose. And like this grate here and stuff. So that kind of, and then they've got stuff in the background and it's kind of all in fog, and that kind of reminds me as well of Limbo, because they have a lot of depth, you know, in their layering for the parallaxing and stuff. So this kind of reminds me of that. It's really interesting to see the effects in black and white. So like the fire, like that to me looks really interesting. There's that kind of 2D perspective, I guess, that you were talking about. But like, I mean, again, it looks really cool and I really like the art style, but I get this vibe that like, if this was color, it would look less photorealistic. Because I'm getting like a photorealistic vibe from this, even though it's a game. And to be fair, like I've seen much more detailed games, but there's just something about the black and white that makes it feel more like a movie, I guess.
Yeah. And actually, that's one thing I really like. Like, look at this shot here, right? That looks like it's a movie. It actually looks like it's a movie. Like, if a movie was shot, that's the angle it would pick.
Well, yeah, well, that's what they've done with the camera as well. It's quite cinematic.
But I think, like, if you're talking about, like, if this wasn't color, like, they would have deliberately put, like, less effort into, like, albedo textures and stuff like that, because they knew from the start.
Yeah, that it would be black and white. Imagine if, like, the creative director just, like, the art director just comes in and says, you know what, I had a dream last night. We're gonna just chuck a black and white, like, post-process effect on this. Sorry, guys.
All the artists that spent like thousands of hours making this, like, just literally just took the next week off, like, mentally preparing themselves.
Well, you know, like the other thing with this, I think, because this is in a way, this is like a color palette restriction, right? Like you've gone ahead and you've said that instead of having, like, you know, RGB colors, you've restricted it into just grayscale. I mean, you can have a lot of levels of that. But like it's kind of like, you know, when you limit yourself, you begin to spend a lot more time within that limited range. And I feel like that's probably something that they've really had to do here. They've really had to assess like, what is our color range? What is like our color palette, you know, in terms of light levels and in terms of like, how do we have this game still feel, but because they've done a great job at that, right? Like this feels very balanced. It doesn't feel, because if you just add a black and white filter to a game, it's probably not going to look that great. I imagine. Can't say I've done it, but... That bokeh for the out of focus lights there, by the way, that you can see flying up, and this as well. That's another reason why this looks so cinematic, actually. It's because the depth of field effect is really nice. That's crazy though. This right here, maybe it's, I mean, to me, this feels like the shadows are too dark. I would lift the shadows a bit. Maybe you can do that in Premiere when you're editing this, by the way. I don't know. I think that, like, for this shot specifically, there's so much contrast that it's too contrasty. It's hard to tell what's going on. There's not much detail. Well, exactly. It's like you can see this is just pure black. This is all pure black. That's all pure white.
Yeah.
The colors, like, there's a lot of color, no pun intended, literally lost here. Like, the color is lost. And that was quite an important shot as well. That's the last shot before the title. So, I don't know. Is this made... Who's making this? Is this an indie studio? I mean, if it is a huge studio, then welcome back to, like, Cherno Knows Nothing, which is basically what this channel is. Considering I know nothing about anything I ever look at.
They're in 3 cities, so that makes me feel like it's more.
284. Damn. 284 people working on this. Nah,
kinda
they're
looks like-
releasing 4 games
4 games
this
okay.
year. Space Punks, Track to Yomi, Shadow Warrior 3, and Evil West. And with across 3 different publishers. No, I mean, yeah.
This kind of has to be at the level of AAA then, right?
I guess, yeah, I guess this is AAA.
Track to Yomi is an interactive experience inspired by old Japanese cinema from the 50s and 60s.
So old Japanese cinema, 50s, 60s vibe. So that, again, makes me think that, I mean, I don't know what old Japanese cinema looks like. Like, because film is traditionally really good at capturing dynamic range. So I have a feeling that, like, what I said about the contrast might actually be the look they're trying to emulate. Yeah.
And it could be like, because again, we're not experts on Japanese cinema, it could be like this is actually a direct reference to some scene.
That's definitely a good point. Yeah, it could be a reference to an actual Japanese film. When it comes down to that, though, I personally always have this hard decision of, like, if we're trying to emulate something from a long time ago that was objectively bad, not saying all Japanese cinema is bad, just saying that, like, obviously there was a technical limitation. And I'm sure that directors of the time were probably not like, oh man, I just love this black and white. It just feels so vintage. No, because they're living in the moment. They're like, you know what? I wish I could portray this differently, but I physically cannot because I'm limited by the technology. So then it's like, when you go back and you make a game about that, are you all purist about it? And do you just make a game that specifically, like, is a one-to-one, like, we are literally in the confines of that technology set, at least artistically, because obviously you're making a game using, like, Unreal Engine or whatever on earth this is using, right? You're not confined to anywhere near that technology, but you're emulating something that looks identical to that with all of its imperfections, and you're staying true to that. Or do you make it in the style of that whilst also improving it so that it's not a terrible experience for the player? Because I could almost see myself getting frustrated in certain areas, being like, dude, this is, like, hurting my eyes. I can't see much. And, like, I'm just looking at the overexposed kind of bloomy areas as well, and it's kind of interesting because there is kind of, like, not much detail in this specific scene compared to some of the other ones we saw. Yeah, my point is, like, we've committed to black and white, but do we commit to black and white that is true to what black and white movies were like in the 60s, or do we literally shoot this movie on, like, an ARRI Alexa these days and then just put a black and white filter on it? Because that's obviously a very different result. I guess my point is I'm just seeing a very exaggerated, like, S-curve where it's just, like, really deep blacks, like pure black, I think. This is an OLED display, so it looks very black. And then, like, the whites are just pure white. Like, film in general is known for quite a faded color space where the whites are quite far. The blacks are lifted, the whites are dragged down, and you have, like, a lower dynamic range in the sense of, like, my blacks are not pure black and my whites are not pure white, whereas this is really stretched out into that range. It's just high contrast. So, yeah, interesting. Whoa, look at this. This is like some fantasy themes here. Like this scene, these scenes, they have so much more dynamic range.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
look at
exactly.
this. I mean, the smoke is so detailed. There's so many levels of gray here. And then you can see all the nuances here. So it was probably that scene stylistically for whatever reason. But see, a game like this, I could definitely see that working out. Because you can tell what's going on here. There's enough detail.
Yeah. Which makes me really think, like, they're trying to reference something. Because that looked to me like a boss fight, you know?
Unreal Engine 4. Okay, there you go. Okay, so this is not just a PlayStation game. You said it's coming out on other platforms as well?
From what
you know? Okay. Oh, cool. What are people saying about it? Great to see gamers taking a different approach in their style. Brings back to the experimental days. Well, yeah, I feel like that's kind of a lot of people these days are trying to make more unique games because the games, like, market is just so filled with so much stuff. So I think we'll probably see more of this stuff going forward, especially because people have decided that they don't really care about the scope of games anymore. Like you have all these huge AAA studios like EA and Activision, you know, with like Call of Duty, Battlefield. Though I feel like those games are getting less and less popular because people are kind of more like, it's not really about this anymore. But also because game dev is so accessible now, right?
Yeah.
Like you could put together a couple of people, you know, like a small studio of like 10 or less, and just make the next hit. You know, I feel like you really don't need that much because you can design a fun experience that people can share with their friends.
Yeah.
And you're kind of good. Cool. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what your thoughts are about Trek to Yomi, and if you've played any of the other games by this studio, because I most definitely have not. And let me know what you want me to take a look at next in the comment section below. If you want to watch us make a game in a weekend, then head on over to the main channel. Have a link there, and you can check out a game we made in 72 hours for a game jam. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.